America is imploding. The internal rot that guarantees World War II. Hello to you all. It is good to be back with you to discuss the precarious state of the world, and more specifically, the alarming disintegration of the internal cohesion of the United States of America. We are living in times of profound delusion. I have spent my career analyzing the behavior of great powers operating under the framework of offensive realism. The core tenet is simple. In an anarchic international system, states must prioritize their survival above all else. To survive, a state must maximize its power. But power is not merely the number of tanks you have in a depot or the number of aircraft carriers you can deploy to the South China Sea. True national power is rooted in a robust economy, a cohesive society, and a rational, calculating leadership. When you look at the United States today, based on the frantic internal signaling we are seeing from Washington, you do not see a hegemon at the peak of its powers. You see a giant with trembling knees, distracted by internal looting and moral decay while its adversaries sharpen their knives. The information coming out of the American Capitol recently acts as a canary in the coal mine for a much larger global catastrophe. We are witnessing a massive meltdown within the ruling political factions of the United States, specifically the Republican apparatus currently aligned with Donald Trump. This is not merely partisan bickering, it is a symptom of a structural inability to govern. And when the world's leading superpower loses the ability to govern itself, the result is never isolationism. The result is almost always external lashing out. I am telling you today that the chaos in the American economy and the cover-ups in its political class are accelerating the timeline for a major kinetic war. Weakness invites aggression, but confusion invites miscalculation. We are seeing both. Let us look at the economic reality because in the world of realism, money is the foundation of military might. You cannot fight a war against China if your population cannot afford eggs. We have members of the United States Congress, specifically from the MAGA wing of the Republican Party, who are currently in a state of absolute panic. Why are they panicking? Because the reality of their economic policies is crashing into the lives of the American voter. You have figures like Congressman Michael Rowley going on television and telling the American people to just wait. He says essentially, don't worry, by Easter of next year, the economy will start looking better. Think about the strategic implication of that statement. Wait until Easter. This is the language of a desperate commander on a losing battlefield, promising that reinforcements are just over the horizon. It is hope. And as I have said many times, hope is not a strategy. When a great power tells its citizens to wait 6 months for the price of bread to stabilize, that power is signaling internal fragility. Congressman Rowley talks about speaking to his brothers and claims that grocery prices are dropping like a rock. He claims eggs are 99 cents and gas is $2. This is what we call a decoupling from reality. When the leadership class hallucinates about the state of the economy, they make catastrophic errors in judgment. If they believe their own propaganda that the domestic front is secure, they may feel emboldened to engage in risky foreign adventures. But if the domestic front is actually crumbling, as the data suggests, then they are marching the country off a cliff. The opposition represented in this discourse by Democratic Congressman Raja Krishnamurthy points out the stark truth. The American people are not feeling this roaring economy. They are seeing premiums skyrocket. We are talking about 22 million people facing insurance premium increases of 114%. In a realistic analysis of national strength, the health of your population is a strategic asset. A sick, uninsured, financially destitute population is not a population that can sustain a long-term great power conflict. If you strip away Medicaid, if you remove the subsidies that keep the working class alive, you are hollowing out the very base of your national power. This brings us to the issue of tariffs and the trade war. The rhetoric from the Trump administration and his supporters in Congress is that tariffs are a magic wand. They believe they can slap tariffs on everything from everywhere and somehow generate prosperity. This is mercantilism driven by emotion rather than calculation. As was pointed out in the analysis of the current situation, when you put tariffs on everything, prices rise for everyone. This is basic economics. But the geopolitical consequence is more severe. We are currently locked in a security competition with China. This is the defining conflict of our time. To compete with China, the United States needs a lean, efficient, and robust economy. By engaging in a chaotic omnibus tariff war that drives up the cost of goods for American farmers and small businesses, Washington is essentially sanctioning itself. We are seeing farmers, the backbone of American logistics and food security, caught in the crosshairs, facing bankruptcy. A nation that bankrupts its own food producers to make a political point is a nation that is not serious about winning a global confrontation. Let us discuss the chaos factor. Congressman Krishnamurti describes the Trump style of governance as chaos. He notes that businesses cannot plan, wind and solar projects are frozen, and billions of dollars in infrastructure are on hold because policy changes at a whim. In international relations, predictability is a currency. Allies need to know you will be there. Enemies need to know where your red lines are. When the United States operates on a doctrine of internal chaos, where laws are overturned overnight and budgets are never finalized, it projects weakness. Vladimir Putin looks at this American chaos and he does not see a formidable enemy. He sees a distracted giant. He sees a country where the government shuts down every few months because they cannot agree on a budget. This emboldens Russia. The Russians understand that time is on their side in Ukraine because the West is fundamentally unserious about the logistics of war, while American politicians argue about when the great big beautiful bill will take effect. The Russians are building artillery shells. While Washington tells its people to wait until Easter for relief, Moscow is hardening its economy against sanction. The contrast is stark and it is dangerous. Furthermore, we must address the moral rot that is being exposed. The discussion regarding the Jeffrey Epstein files is not merely a tabloid scandal, it is a matter of national security and state legitimacy. We have a situation where the Department of Justice and the political establishment are seemingly engaged in a cover-up of a child sex trafficking ring that implicates the highest levels of the global elite. We are told there are 2 million missing records, then suddenly a million records are found. Redactions are made to protect the powerful while victims are left exposed. From a realist perspective, why does this matter? It matters because legitimacy is a component of power. If the American people believe their leaders are comprised of predators and those who protect predators, the social contract dissolves. A population that despises its leaders will not fight for them. If a war breaks out with China over Taiwan, or if the situation in Ukraine escalates to a direct NATO-Russia conflict, the United States government will need to ask its young men and women to sacrifice their lives. But if those young men and women look at Washington and see a cesspool of corruption, blackmail, and cover-ups, they will refuse. The cohesion of the state fractures. This cover-up also suggests that the decision-makers in Washington are vulnerable to blackmail. In the world of intelligence and statecraft raft, compromising material is a powerful weapon. If foreign intelligence agencies possess the same files that are being hidden from the American public, then American policy is being held hostage. We have to ask ourselves, are decisions being made in the national interest of the United States, or are they being made to protect the secrets of a compromised elite? This adds a layer of terrifying unpredictability to global affairs. Now, I want to talk about the large, lousy law and the destruction of the social safety net, as these domestic policies have dire international consequences. The plan to roll back the Inflation Reduction Act to kill the tax credits for clean energy and to disrupt the transition to a modern energy grid is a strategic error. Future warfare and future economic dominance will depend on energy independence and resilience. By creating regulatory chaos in the energy sector, the United States is ceding ground to China, which is marching ahead with ruthless efficiency in green technology. We are seeing electricity prices skyrocket in the United States because utilities cannot plan. A great power with an unstable energy grid is a great power with a glass jaw. The timeline mentioned waiting until the first and second quarter of 2026 is significant. It implies a period of prolonged suffering for the American populace. History tells us that when a population suffers for too long, and when the domestic economy fails to deliver basic security, leaders often look for a distraction. There is no greater distraction than war. I am deeply concerned that as the economic dissatisfaction in America grows, As the sugar high of tax cuts for the wealthy wears off and the reality of inflation and healthcare costs sets in, the administration will feel the pressure to rally the flag. The tensions are already there. We are pushing the Russians into a corner in Ukraine. We are poking the Chinese in the eye over Taiwan. We are engaged in a shadow war with Iran. Any one of these flashpoints could be activated to shift the narrative away from the price of eggs in Trumbull County. The alarming part of the analysis provided is the sheer disconnect of the Republican leadership when they say the answer 1,000% is going to be in the pocketbook. They are correct, but not in the way they think. They believe the pocketbook will vindicate them. The reality is that the empty pocketbook is radicalizing the population. We are seeing a polarization that makes the United States look less like a stable democracy and more like a country on the verge of civil unrest. The meltdown described is not just a public relations failure, it is a failure of state capacity. Let us return to the concept of the cover-up plus chaos. This phrase perfectly encapsulates the current American condition. We have a cover-up of elite criminality combined with the chaos of incompetent governance. This destroys the reputation of the United States on the world stage. Soft power, the ability to attract others to your cause, is evaporating. Who wants to emulate a system that cannot keep the government funded, cannot keep healthcare affordable, and hides the crimes of pedophiles? The city on a hill is looking more like a slumlord's basement. This weakness provokes the wolves. Xi Jinping is a rational actor. He calculates cost and benefit. He looks at the United States and sees a country tearing itself apart. He sees a military that is struggling with recruitment because the youth have lost faith in the system. He sees an industrial base that has been hollowed out and is now being battered by incoherent tariff policy. He sees a political class that is more interested in fighting culture wars and hiding Epstein files than in formulating a grand strategy. Xi Jinping may conclude that the window of opportunity to take Taiwan is opening. He may calculate that the United States is too internally sick to respond effectively. This is how wars start, through the perception of weakness. And what of the American people? The transcript highlights a certain resilience. It mentions that while institutions like the media and corporate CEOs sucked and bent the knee to power, the people said, "Not happening." This is the only glimmer of hope in a dark landscape. The raw power of the United States lies in its geography and its people, but the people are being betrayed by their leaders. The working class is being crushed by policies that favor the oligarchs, the very same oligarchs who likely appear in those redacted files. The warning I must give you is this: do not assume that because the United States is a wealthy country, it is immune to collapse or catastrophe. The Soviet Union was a superpower with thousands of nuclear weapons, and it evaporated almost overnight because its internal contradictions became unbearable. The United States is accumulating internal contradictions at a record pace. The deficit is exploding. The trust in government is at an all-time low. The political polarization is violent. And the economic inequality is reaching levels that usually precede a revolution. In this environment, the return of Donald Trump and his chaos regime acts as an accelerant. It pours gasoline on every fire. The meltdown of the GOP is not just bad news for their party, it is bad news for global stability. A chaotic America is a dangerous America. If the administration decides that a trade war is not enough to distract the people, they may turn to a shooting war. We must also consider the specific mention of the midterms and the cynical timing of these policies. The strategy of hurting the people and then blaming the other side, or delaying the pain until after an election, is the hallmark of a corrupt political culture. It treats the citizenry as pawns, but pawns can be sacrificed. And in the great game of geopolitics, if the United States continues on this path of self-immolation, it will be the average American who pays the price, not just with their wallet, but with their blood. The danger of war is rising every day. The mechanisms of restraint are failing. The adults in the room have left the building, and we are left with ideologues, grifters, and people who think that economic devastation can be spun with good messaging. The world is watching. Moscow is watching. Beijing is watching. Tehran is watching. They see the meltdown. They see the cover-up. They see the panic. And they are preparing for the moment when the American colossus stumbles. We must wake up to this reality. The pocketbook issues are not just about personal finance. They are about national survival. A nation that cannot feed its people or provide them with health care is a nation that cannot lead the world. And a nation that cannot lead the world but insists on trying to dominate it is a nation that is destined for tragedy. Thank you for listening. Please stay vigilant, for the times ahead will require clear eyes and a strong stomach.